Before we start, I want to say that only 1% of you are subscribed. Please subscribe because when we reach 1,000 subscribers, I will post a special video for you. In the dense, overgrown forests of the Pacific Northwest, Mark Anderson, a seasoned wildlife researcher, was collecting samples near his research station when a thunderous roar shattered the evening calm. He looked up just in time to see a streak of fire slicing through the dusk sky. Something was descending rapidly, and it was heading straight for the forest. Grabbing his emergency kit, Mark sprinted towards the crash site. His mind raced with possibilities: meteorite, military jet. But nothing in his training had prepared him for what he found. Amidst a clearing, surrounded by charred trees and smoldering earth, lay a spacecraft of unmistakable origin. Not from Earth. As Mark approached, cautious but driven by an insatiable curiosity, the hatch of the craft popped open with a hiss of escaping air. Out stumbled an alien, her features sharp and ethereal, her skin shimmering under the moonlight. She collapsed, and Mark rushed to her side. "Hey, are you okay? Can you understand me?" Mark asked, checking for injuries. The alien, catching her breath, nodded slightly and touched a device at her throat. After a moment, her next words were halting, but clear in English. "I understand. I am injured. Help, please." Mark helped her to sit up, assessing her condition. "I'm Mark. What's your name?" "Lyra," she said, wincing as she clutched her side. "Okay, Lyra, let's get you fixed up." He guided her slowly back to his cabin, supporting her weight. "You've had quite the fall. What brings you to Earth?" "A research mission," she replied. "I did not intend to land so forcefully." Inside the cabin, Mark gently set Lyra on a couch and began tending to her injuries with his first aid kit. As he worked, they exchanged questions about each other's worlds. "Your technology must be far beyond ours," Mark observed, dabbing antiseptic on a wound. Lyra chuckled softly. "In some ways, yes, but we seek knowledge, just as you do. My mission is to learn about life on other planets. And you just travel alone?" Mark was impressed by her bravery. "There are others exploring different parts of your galaxy. We come in peace, always." As he wrapped a bandage around her torso, their eyes met, and a silent understanding passed between them. Here, in this small, isolated cabin, two beings from vastly different worlds shared a moment of connection. "So what happens now?" Mark asked. "Is your crew coming to get you?" Lyra shook her head. "My ship needs repairs. I will need to communicate with my home planet, but that takes time." "Well," Mark smiled, "looks like you're stuck with me for a bit." Lyra smiled back, a glint of amusement in her eyes. "It seems so. I hope that is not an inconvenience." "Not at all. It's not every day you get to make friends with someone from another galaxy." Mark chuckled. "I have a lot to show you about Earth." "And I about my world," Lyra replied, her voice growing stronger. As the night deepened, Mark pulled out some maps and began planning how to utilize the next few days. There was a lot he wanted to share, and if he was honest, a lot he hoped to learn from this unexpected visitor. The adventure, it seemed, was just beginning. Morning light filtered through the windows of the cabin as Mark prepared a light breakfast. Lyra sat at the table, still pale but noticeably more composed than the night before. Mark set down a plate of scrambled eggs and toast in front of her, along with a cup of herbal tea. "Here, try this," Mark suggested, pushing the plate towards Lyra. "It's pretty basic Earth food, but it's good for recovery." Lyra eyed the food curiously before taking a cautious bite. "It's different, but good," she commented, her device translating her words smoothly. While Lyra ate, Mark pulled out his first aid manual, flipping to a section on dealing with foreign biology. "I'm not sure how much of our medicine is applicable to you, but I'll do what I can to help," he said, looking over at her. "How are you feeling this morning?" "Better, thank you," Lyra replied. "Your care has been most effective. However, I am concerned about my ship." "We'll check it out today," Mark reassured her. First, though, I want to make sure you're stable. Any dizziness? Nausea? No, those symptoms have passed, she answered. That's good, Mark nodded. After breakfast, we'll head to your ship. I have some tools here that might help us assess the damage. After breakfast, Mark packed a toolkit and some supplies into his backpack. Lyra, moving gingerly, accompanied him back to the crash site. The forest was tranquil, with only the sounds of birds and the rustle of leaves underfoot. Mark watched Lyra as she navigated the terrain, impressed by her resilience. As they approached the ship, the extent of the damage was more apparent in the daylight. The craft was compact, sleek, and obviously designed for solo reconnaissance missions. Let's see what we can do, Mark said, setting down his pack and pulling out various tools. Lyra led him to a panel on the side of the ship, which she opened with a touch. Inside, a mess of circuits and alien technology blinked back at them. She pointed to a specific module. This is the main navigation control. It's the most damaged part. Mark peered inside, trying to make sense of the alien technology. Okay, let me take a closer look. Maybe there's something I can rig up to stabilize it for now. With careful fingers, Mark tested connections and wires, guided by Lyra's explanations of their functions. Despite the complexity, he began to understand the basics of her technology enough to be helpful. Here, Mark said, tightening a connection he suspected was loose. Try this. Lyra activated the device, and a series of lights flickered on. You did it, she exclaimed, a wide smile breaking across her face. It's stable now. Thank you, Mark. Teamwork, Mark grinned back, wiping his hands on a rag. What's next? We need to send a distress signal to my planet. With the navigation control stable, I can do that now, Lyra explained. Mark nodded, watching as Lyra worked efficiently, her fingers moving swiftly over the alien controls. Within minutes, she looked up with a relieved expression. The signal is sent. Help will come, but it will take some time. That gives us plenty of time to learn from each other, Mark said thoughtfully. You know, there's a lot of Earth I'd like to show you, Lyra. And I'm curious about your world, too. I would like that very much, Lyra agreed. I have much to share about my culture and technology, and I am eager to learn about your planet. As they headed back to the cabin, the atmosphere between them was light, filled with the promise of mutual discovery. Mark felt a surge of excitement at the prospect of this interstellar cultural exchange. Unbeknownst to him, this was only the beginning of what would become a deeply transformative experience for both him and his unexpected guest. The following days brought a gentle rhythm to Mark and Lyra's interactions as they ventured further into the forest. With Lyra's injuries healing, Mark decided to introduce her to the nuances of his research and the natural beauty of Earth's environments. This way, Mark said, leading Lyra along a trail he often surveyed for wildlife. I've set up some camera traps around here. We might catch a glimpse of some deer, or if we're lucky, maybe even a bobcat. Lyra, equipped with a sturdy pair of boots Mark had found for her, followed closely, her eyes scanning the surroundings. And these cameras are hidden from the animals? Exactly, Mark explained, stopping to check one of the devices. They're triggered by motion, so we can observe animals without disturbing their natural behaviors. Fascinated, Lyra watched as Mark retrieved data from the camera. We have similar technology for observation on my planet, though it's more often used for atmospheric studies. Mark showed her the images captured by the Camera A family of deer from the night before. Here, look at this. They came right by last night. Lyra leaned in, examining the photos. Beautiful creatures. Do you study them? Part of my research, yes. Tracking their numbers, health, and behaviors helps us understand the ecosystem's health as a whole, Mark explained, his tone enthusiastic. As they walked, Lyra shared details about her own world, a planet with vast oceans and sprawling archipelagos. Our main continents are small, scattered islands. So much of our wildlife is marine-based. That sounds amazing, Mark said, genuinely intrigued. Must be quite the view from space. It is, Lyra smiled, then paused, looking up at the trees. But this is also beautiful, in a very different way. Their path led them to a stream, where Mark usually collected water samples. He demonstrated the process, filling several vials and sealing them carefully. "Do you test these here, or back at your cabin?" Lyra asked, handing him a vial. "Back at the cabin. I have some basic equipment there for analysis," Mark replied, securing the samples in his pack. The afternoon sun began to wane, casting long shadows over the trail. Mark suggested they head back, and on the way, he pointed out various plants, explaining their uses and significance. "This one is called lavender. It's used a lot in human cultures for its fragrance and medicinal properties," Mark said, plucking a sprig and handing it to Lyra. She smelled it, a curious expression crossing her face. "It's very calming. We have a plant with similar effects on my world." Back at the cabin, Mark showed Lyra how he processed the water samples. Lyra took notes, her device occasionally chiming in with translations. "As much as I love the fieldwork, this part is crucial. Helps us keep the ecosystem in check," Mark explained, demonstrating the use of a microscope. Lyra was quick to grasp the concepts. "It's similar to how we monitor our reefs. You use smaller equipment, though." Mark laughed. "Yeah, we work with what we have." As they wrapped up, Lyra turned to Mark with a thoughtful expression. "This exchange of knowledge is invaluable. I believe we have much to learn from each other." Mark nodded in agreement. "Absolutely, and there's plenty more I'd like to show you about Earth." Lyra's eyes twinkled with anticipation. "And I, too, have much to share about my world. Perhaps tomorrow I can teach you about our technologies, the way you have shared your planet with me." "Looking forward to it," Mark said, a sense of camaraderie forming between them as they delved deeper into each other's worlds, their journey of mutual discovery just beginning to unfold. Mark and Lyra settled by a small bonfire outside the cabin under the vast expanse of the night sky, now dotted with countless stars. Lyra had expressed a wish to learn about celestial navigation as used on Earth, and Mark, with his rudimentary knowledge of the stars, was eager to share. "You see that group of stars?" Mark pointed towards the sky. "That's called Orion. It's one of the most recognizable constellations in our night sky." Lyra adjusted her device and peered upwards. "Interesting formation. We use the Sigma Tauri cluster for basic orientation in our galaxy. It's quite similar in brightness and positioning." Mark handed her a star map, the paper crackling softly in the night air. "Here, I marked some of the major constellations we can see from here. It might be fun to compare them with what you have back home." As Lyra studied the map, the flickering light of the fire played across her features, highlighting her intense concentration. "There is a universal beauty in the stars, isn't there? A shared sky, yet seen so differently from world to world." "Absolutely," Mark agreed, tossing another log onto the fire. "I've always found it humbling. Makes our problems seem smaller somehow." They spent the next hour exchanging tales from their respective planets about the stars. Lyra recounted a myth from her culture about a great explorer who used the stars to navigate between worlds, not unlike herself. Mark, in turn, shared an Earth story about sailors who used the North Star to find their way home. "The stars have always been a guide for us, too," he said. "It seems the stars have a way of bringing us together," Lyra mused, her eyes still fixed on the heavens. "Yeah, it does seem that way," Mark smiled, pulling a blanket around his shoulders. The temperature was dropping, and he noticed Lyra shivering slightly. "Here, take this," he said, draping another blanket over her shoulders. "Thank you, Mark. Your planet is beautiful but quite chilly at night," Lyra chuckled, pulling the blanket tighter around her. The conversation turned to other topics, Lyra's journey to Earth, the wildlife they had observed earlier in the day, and Mark's ongoing projects. But as the night deepened, so did their connection, bridged by the shared awe of the universe and the warmth of the fire. Suddenly, a bright light streaked across the sky, a shooting star. "Make a wish," Mark said spontaneously, his voice a soft whisper in the dark. A wish? Lyra looked at him curious. It's an Earth tradition. If you see a shooting star, you make a wish. It's supposed to bring good luck, Mark explained. Lyra watched as another star traced a swift path across the sky. Then I wish for more nights like this, she said, her voice earnest. Learning from you, sharing stories, understanding more about this beautiful world. Mark felt a warmth in his chest that wasn't from the fire. I second that wish. As the fire died down to embers, and the night wrapped around them like a dark, comforting blanket, they sat in silence, each lost in thought but appreciating the company of the other. For Mark, the universe had suddenly expanded infinitely, filled with new stars, new stories, and new possibilities. For Lyra, Earth was no longer just a stop on a map, but a place where connections could be formed, under the shared light of the stars. On a rainy afternoon confined indoors, Mark had an idea. Lyra, how about we share something from our cultures that's close to our hearts? Maybe music? Lyra brightened at the suggestion. Music is a profound part of our heritage too. I'd love to share some with you. Mark set up his old record player, dusting off a few vinyls. Here's something classic. It's called jazz. It evolved over a century ago and has roots in various human cultures. As the smooth melodies of a saxophone filled the room, Lyra listened intently, her head tilted in fascination. The layers of sounds. They interweave so beautifully, she remarked. Yeah, it's all about improvisation and feeling the moment, Mark explained, watching her reaction. I have something for you too. Lyra pulled out a small device from her bag, pressing a few buttons until a series of harmonious tones flowed out. The music had an ethereal quality, with deep bass vibrations that seemed to resonate in the chest. It's called voral. It's meant to mimic the underwater currents of our world, Lyra said, her eyes reflecting the pride of her culture. Mark felt the room fill with the alien melody, each pulse drawing him deeper into Lyra's world. It's mesmerizing, he admitted. Feels like it's telling a story. It is, Lyra nodded. Each movement represents a part of our planet's ocean cycles, which are crucial for us. Moved by the exchange, Mark suggested, how about we try some dancing? I can show you some basic steps to this jazz tune. Lyra agreed, albeit with a hint of hesitation. I'm not sure how well I'll do, but I'll try. Mark stood and offered his hand, which Lyra took, stepping close. He guided her through a simple swing dance step. Just follow my lead and feel the rhythm. As they moved to the music, Lyra's initial awkwardness faded, replaced by a graceful fluidity that surprised them both. They laughed together, the sound mingling with the music in a joyful harmony. After the dance, they sat down, catching their breath. That was exhilarating, Lyra said, a flush of color on her cheeks. It was fantastic, Mark agreed, feeling a closeness to Lyra that had only deepened since her arrival. As the rain continued to patter against the windows, they spent the rest of the afternoon exchanging more music, each piece a new revelation of their worlds. Lyra showed Mark the traditional chants of her people, which were used to celebrate various cosmic events, while Mark played some iconic rock and roll, explaining its rebellious origins and its impact on human society. This exchange, it's more than just learning about music, Mark said thoughtfully as the evening wore on. It's like we're weaving a new understanding between us. Yes, it's a bridge, Lyra mused. One that connects not only two people but also two worlds. As the sky cleared and the last notes of an earthly guitar faded away, they were left in a comfortable silence, a mutual respect and understanding forming the bedrock of their growing friendship. They had shared pieces of their souls through their music, and in doing so had created a symphony all their own. The morning was brisk and clear, as Mark decided to introduce Lyra to another Earth tradition: cooking. Since we've explored music, how about food next? I'll show you how to make a simple breakfast dish from scratch. Lyra, ever curious, was immediately intrigued. I would like that. Cooking is quite different on my planet. We use synthesized nutrients mostly. Mark laughed as they walked into the kitchen. Well, here on Earth, we still do it the old-fashioned way. Today, we're making pancakes. Pancakes? Lyra repeated, rolling the unfamiliar word around. Yeah, they're flat cakes cooked on a griddle. Very popular here. First, we mix the batter. Mark handed her a bowl and a whisk. Here, you can help by mixing these together. Lyra took the bowl, watching as Mark added flour, eggs, milk, and a bit of sugar. Just mix until it's smooth, he instructed. As Lyra whisked, Mark heated a pan on the stove, dropping a bit of butter into it. The kitchen filled with the comforting smell of melting butter. Lyra watched the butter sizzle and bubble. What does it do? It keeps the batter from sticking to the pan and adds flavor, Mark explained, taking the bowl from her once the batter was ready. He poured a ladleful into the hot pan, the mixture sizzling as it hit the surface. Lyra watched, fascinated as the edges of the pancake started to firm up. When do you know to flip it? Mark slid the spatula under the pancake, showing her the golden brown underside. When it looks like this. He flipped it, revealing a perfectly cooked surface. Now you try the next one. With careful guidance, Lyra poured and flipped her first pancake, a look of concentration on her face. When she successfully turned it over, her face lit up with pride. I did it! You're a natural, Mark complimented, smiling broadly. As they cooked the rest of the batter, Mark set the table, placing syrups and fresh fruits he had gathered earlier. Sitting down to eat, Lyra tried her first bite of pancake, her expression thoughtful. It's very comforting, she decided, smiling. Warm and soft. Glad you like it, Mark said, happy to see her enjoying something so quintessentially earthly. They ate in companionable silence, the earlier awkwardness replaced by a warm familiarity. After breakfast, Mark suggested a walk in the orchard behind the cabin to help digest their meal. As they strolled among the apple trees, Lyra plucked an apple from a branch, examining it in the sunlight. Fruit right from the tree. Everything here is so alive, so vibrant. It's one of the joys of living so close to nature, Mark explained, picking an apple for himself. They continued their walk, the orchard providing a tranquil backdrop to their deepening conversation about Earth's agriculture compared to Lyra's synthesized food. This simplicity, it's refreshing, Lyra mused, biting into the apple. There's something profound about eating something that's grown from the soil, nurtured by sunlight and rain. Yeah, it's about connection to the land, to the ecosystem, Mark agreed, glad to see her appreciating another aspect of human culture. Their walk brought them closer, not just to each other, but to the essence of sharing a life, however briefly. As they headed back to the cabin, their hands brushed, an electric moment of contact that lingered longer than necessary. They exchanged a glance, a mix of surprise and realization dawning in their eyes. This simple act of cooking together had unexpectedly stirred something within them, a connection that was becoming harder to ignore. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the cabin's interior as Mark and Lyra settled into an uneasy silence, each lost in thought after their unintentional touch. The air was thick with unspoken words, and Mark felt the weight of the moment pressing down on them. Finally, Mark cleared his throat, breaking the silence. Lyra, about earlier in the orchard. Lyra looked up, her eyes meeting his. A gentle seriousness etched across her features. Yes, I've been thinking about that too. There's something between us, Mark started, unsure how to navigate these uncharted waters. I can't ignore it anymore, but I'm also aware of our differences and what they could mean. Lyra nodded slowly, her gaze steady. I feel it too, Mark. This connection. It's unlike anything I've experienced before, but I know it's complicated. I am not of this world, and my time here is limited. Mark leaned forward, his voice earnest. I know, and I don't want to make things difficult for you. But ignoring how I feel doesn't feel right either. It's not just about us being from different worlds. It's about how I feel when I'm with you. Lyra paused, taking in his words, then spoke softly, yet with resolve. "Mark, I want you to be inside me, not just in the physical sense, but in every way. I want to understand you, to be part of your world as you have become a part of mine, even if it's just for now." The confession hung between them, bold and stark. Mark reached across, taking her hand in his. "Lyra, I feel the same. We don't know what the future holds, but I want to explore this, whatever this is, with you." Lyra squeezed his hand, a smile breaking through her initial reservation. "Then let's not hold back. Let's give this a chance and see where it leads." "Agreed," Mark said, a weight lifting from his shoulders. "Whatever happens, I want to make the most of the time we have together." The mood lightened and Lyra's curiosity returned. "Tell me more about your life here, about the things you love on this planet." Mark obliged, his heart lighter, and they spent the rest of the evening sharing stories and dreams. They talked about Mark's childhood, the small adventures that led him to his passion for nature, and his hopes for the future. Lyra shared more about her culture, her people's aspirations, and their explorations of the cosmos. As they talked, the boundaries between them blurred, their differences becoming points of fascination rather than barriers. As night fell, they prepared dinner together in a comfortable routine, laughing and sharing small touches that felt charged with new meaning. After eating, they cleaned up together, their movements synchronized in a dance they were only beginning to learn. Later, sitting by the fireplace, Mark turned to Lyra. "Today has been incredible. I'm glad we spoke our minds." Lyra, her face illuminated by the firelight, nodded. "Me too. I've never felt more at home than I do right now, here with you." Their eyes locked, and without another word, they leaned in, their lips meeting in a kiss that sealed their newfound understanding. It was a promise of the moment, a quiet acknowledgement of their deepening bond. As the fire crackled beside them, they explored this new dimension of their relationship. Each kiss and touch a discovery, each moment a cherished memory in the making. The night deepened around them, but within the cabin, a new light burned, a beacon of shared warmth and connection, lighting their way forward. The early morning light crept through the curtains of the cabin, casting a warm glow across the room where Mark and Lyra now lay entwined in bed. The previous night had brought them closer than ever before, crossing boundaries neither had anticipated when they first met. Lyra was the first to stir, her movements gentle as not to wake Mark. But he was already awake, watching her with a soft expression. "Good morning," he whispered, his voice rough with sleep. Lyra turned to face him, a serene smile playing on her lips. "Good morning. How did you sleep?" "Better than I have in a long time," Mark admitted, brushing a stray lock of hair from her face. "And you?" "Very well," she replied, her smile deepening. "This is new to me, this feeling. I woke up feeling happy, content." Mark pulled her closer, his eyes reflecting the same contentment. "Me too. I guess we're discovering a lot of firsts together." The room fell into a comfortable silence as they lay there, simply enjoying each other's presence. Finally, Mark spoke up. "We should probably start planning today. You mentioned your people would be coming soon?" "Yes, they will arrive in a few days," Lyra confirmed. "They'll come to retrieve me and the data I've gathered." "And then what?" Mark's voice was calm, but his grip tightened slightly around her. Lyra sensed his concern. "I've been thinking about that, last night, and what we've shared. It's changed things for me, Mark. I want to explore where this leads with you." Mark's heart leapt at her words. "Are you saying—" "I want to stay longer," she interrupted, her decision clear. "I'll ask for an extension, and I want to take you to my world, show you everything I've told you about." Excitement and disbelief mingled in Mark's expression. "Really? Lyra, are you sure? What about your responsibilities?" "I am sure," Lyra affirmed. "My research can continue here, and you've shown me so much already. It's only fair I do the same." Mark sat up, pulling her with him. "Then let's do it. Let's plan for it." They spent the morning in bed, mapping out possibilities and discussing logistics. Lyra explained what Mark would need for the journey, and what to expect when meeting her people. Mark listened intently, his mind racing with images of alien cities and seas. Later they moved to the living room with notebooks and tablets spread around them, making lists of what Mark would need to prepare for the trip. Lyra showed him images of her home, a vibrant planet with sprawling oceans and towering cities, so different yet somehow familiar. "We'll need to get you a universal translator like mine," Lyra noted, tapping her device. "Communication will be key." Mark nodded, jotting down notes. "And I'll need to learn about your customs. Make sure I don't accidentally offend anyone." Lyra laughed. "I'll teach you, don't worry. You'll fit right in." As the day progressed, their plans solidified, and the reality of their adventure began to sink in. They were not just two beings from different worlds anymore. They were partners, stepping into the future together. By the time evening arrived, their initial plan was set. They would spend the next few days preparing, waiting for Lyra's people to arrive, and then Mark would see the stars. Not from Earth, but from a place he once could only dream of. Mark looked over at Lyra, who was now leaning against him, her eyes tired but happy. "This is going to be the journey of a lifetime, isn't it?" "It is," she agreed, reaching for his hand. "Together." And in the quiet cabin, as the sun set outside, Mark and Lyra looked ahead, not just to the stars, but to a future they would navigate together, no matter the distance, no matter the differences. Their journey was just beginning, but they were ready for the stars, for each other, for everything that lay ahead.